Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. In reading the policy, uniform procedure, is that interpreted as the grading guidelines document that's published by the school division?
I would interpret that as the regulation and the guidelines working together in concert.
Okay. And specific to the changes, a couple of concerns that have been brought to me about this. The first concern is, while the conversation at the grade level and department level is really important to go into those guidelines and have that conversation about grading expectations, there is a concern about the amount of time this process may take. And I understand that regulation hasn't necessarily been put in place in response to the policy that we haven't passed yet. But do we have an idea of what instruments, timetables that this will take? There is some concern that this is going to be a bit of a lift, and administrators and teachers already have a lot on their plates. So while not sacrificing the conversation that we think is important, is there a shared concern? Do we have a way or an idea of how much time this might take a school to go through this process?
Well, it's a relatively new conversation. So I think part of this is going to have to be monitoring over the course of the year. How real is that concern, and trying, because folks haven't gone through that.
Correct.
So how real is that? We are working with DOSL to develop some templates that they can use, some guiding questions that they can use to help work through the guidelines more quickly. And we've just, even at the admin conference, had a meeting with our administrators to begin talking about the process that we would use and ask them to lead in their buildings. I think it's going to be a feeling out during the first year of how does that conversation go, where are there tweaks that we might need to offer in terms of support, or what other resources might the schools need in order to carry out those conversations.
Thank you. Another concern that was brought to me was that teacher intentions that were decided at the grade level and department level may not be reflected in the final document administration gives to DOSL. If teachers at the department or grade level feel like that's the case, what is the remedy for that?
In that case, they would work directly with their director or executive director, and they would be able to express those concerns, maybe show the differences, and then that would be an opportunity for a conversation between the Department of School Leadership and the principal and the teachers who did develop that work.
Okay. And then a final question, at least for this round. Is it typical for school boards not to directly approve grading guidelines?
Right. So what's typical is to establish policy, review regulations, and in this instance, review guidelines, which is fine, but typically it's policy that's approved by the board. And so if you think about how things work across the division, if you were to try to, if you were to establish a precedent of wanting to review and approve and wordsmith guidelines, I mean, think about the procurement guidelines that we have, the business services manuals that we have, and a lot of the other guidelines that we put in place that are operational. Here's how we're going to operationalize these policies. I don't know that I've ever worked in a school division where boards would get into that level of administrative detail. But I think it's fair to say that we've spent quite a bit of time with the board reviewing these guidelines and seeking input, not just from you all, but incorporating input that we received through the whole process into those guidelines and then sharing how that was incorporated. So it's not done in isolation, sitting in a kind of back closet. I mean, I think that was a pretty transparent conversation about those guidelines.
Absolutely, and I think that's been pretty clear. Thank you.